This video is being made to discuss scooter brake adjustment for the Qiewa scooter, the Q1hummer. This applies to most higher-end mountain bikes as well, and even some road bikes, so it's the same concepts that a bicycle uses for a brake. But what you have here is your caliper and your rotor, and then your brake pads inside. And we hear a lot of different varying degrees on how sensitive people would like their brakes, and so you can always modify this to what you like. The thing about adjusting brakes is microns, half a millimeter, can really make a big difference in terms of, is it making some sort of rubbing noise? Is it braking absolutely perfectly? Is it as sensitive as I want it to be? And anything like that. So this is really a game of preference, but there's a lot of things you can do here to adjust it to make it the way you want. It can be kind of tricky because there's multiple points to adjust at that we'll kind of discuss here, but it's definitely doable with some patience and just some overall understanding about how the caliper works. So just, if you have some experience with this, I'm just going to cover some real basics here in the beginning, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit more detail on what you can do to kind of fine tune it. This is a little bit older style brake, so not everything will apply here, but I'll try and remember the one thing that doesn't apply in the newer style brakes. But from the beginning, you have your brake cable coming down here, and it goes through something called a barrel adjuster. This adjuster right here is, as your brake pad wears away, you are going to need to pull the handle more and more and more to apply the brakes efficiently, or sufficiently, I suppose would be the better word. So as the brake pad wears, you can loosen this barrel adjuster to, in essence, or not even in essence, to physically lengthen the cable here, which pulls the brake pad closer to the rotor as the brake pad is wearing away. So you would loosen this up as you use the scooter, and then just tighten that nut here to create a firm hold on that gap. You can also achieve the same results by loosening this right here and tightening up the spring. The problem with that, though, is sometimes when these get very worn away and people keep adjusting it here, you have a very short throw for this spring, and it tends to just not feel good, the responsiveness of the brakes. So I would go here. Also, this is if your brake, or if your caliper has this open spacer here in the nut, at the pivot point, I guess I should say, you can take a small hex in there and tighten it, and it's designed to push the brake pad closer to the rotor, which is a third way, in fact, to adjust this. The newest ones don't utilize this because we've had some, I guess there's some things we didn't like about it, but on the inside, and I don't think it's going to show here on the camera here, but on the inside, the same concept exists, and that is still true on all models of this. There is a nut over here that you can push in or out to change the responsiveness of the brake. Now, these sorts of style brakes, they only push in from outside to in. So when you apply the brake, it's pushing the brake pad in this direction. So a misconception can sometimes be that you want the rotor right in the middle between the two pads, but you actually don't, because what's going to happen there is, as the brake pad's pushing against the rotor, it's going to take the rotor and bend it in. And that distance between pad, rotor, and then bend in to touch that interior pad is going to be farther, and it's going to take more effort and be less efficient than if you started out with the rotor being very, very close to that inner pad to begin with, which is the ideal location for that. And then as you apply the brakes, it's only having to push it a little bit to then create friction on both sides of the rotor to get you maximum performance. Other micro adjustments to be made. Right here, this is one that's missed a lot, and even sometimes we would like to see it better delivered like this. This can be up just ever so slightly. You can see there's a gap right above this nut, maybe. I'm trying to adjust my camera as I talk. You want that down as far as you can, because that's just going to increase the amount of surface area that the pad has contact with the rotor, which is just going to increase your stopping power. The newer model mounts, which I don't have here, also have mounting screws on top. And so what that's going to do, and you'll see, it's actually, this is flipped in this direction. It's going to give you the same concept but flipped horizontal plane, and then you can slide the brake caliper in and out and achieve what you want. And to kind of illustrate that, that's kind of what's going on here. you see this long slot here on these two black screws. That's also allowing the rotor to go forward and back. Or I'm sorry, the caliper. I keep saying the wrong thing. But in essence, on this design, you would prefer this to be as far back and as far down as you can achieve to get maximum braking power. And then on the other ones where the mount is horizontal, you're going to have these two screws. They're roughly about in this location. If you loosen those two, it will allow you to take the caliper and slide it in, or inward and outward to get the braking preference you want. Incidentally, while I'm thinking about it, this barrel adjuster also exists up by the handle, so you can also lengthen the cable there. I think that should cover most things about it. It's really a game of just tweaking. A lot of times you'll make it worse before you make it better as you kind of get used to how these work, but after some time with them, most people usually get pretty efficient at setting these up.